wherever you may be. Welcome back for another edition of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. Join your host, Bill Alvstad, and co-host, sports writer and football analyst Keith Myers as we talk Seahawks football.
Welcome back to another edition of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with co-host Keith Myers, here to preview the Jets visiting the Seattle Seahawks on the second to last game of the year. I have no idea what's going to happen, but let's talk about it and try to figure it out. Welcome in, Keith.
Yeah, this is a game that's weird because both these teams are kind of fighting for their playoff lives. Both these teams are kind of in a position where it doesn't matter how hard they fight, they might not get there anyway.
It's true.
But both teams seem to think that they, still have a shot, so they're going to go for it. I have no idea what to expect from this game because I don't know which team actually is going to come out and play like they still have something to play for.
Yeah, I mean, the Seahawks and the Jets have lost a combined 7 straight games. Seahawks 3, Jets 4. Both teams are in the playoff bubble, still in contention, 7-8, better than expected when the season started. Yet here they are. We still don't kind of know exactly who they are in season. We kind of figured it out what we need to fix when we get to the off season, but right now they're still playing for contention. I know from experience with Pete Carroll is they fight tooth and nail until they're eliminated. So I expect them to come out and play hard. And the Jets are well coached. Robert Saleh is there. Previously had some experience under Pete Carroll as a defensive quality control coach, went on to be the defensive coordinator with the 49ers. So there's history there. There'll be no surprises really in this game. It just comes down to will, I think.
Yeah. I mean, the Jets are 7-8. They're also been up and down this season based on who's playing quarterback. When Zach Wilson's been in there, their offense has really struggled and their defense couldn't keep up. But when they got Mike White in there, the offense was able to do enough to take the pressure off the defense, and they're going to win. And Mike White is cleared to play and is playing in this game. So the Seahawks are going to have their work cut out for them because the Jets are a better team than their record as long as Mike White's playing.
I think that one of the key stats I saw between the two quarterbacks wasn't necessarily the completion percentage or yards after a catch, yards per completion, et cetera. It was the time it took for them to get the ball out. And Zach Wilson was dead last in the NFL at over 3 seconds, 3.21, something like that, in getting the ball out. Worse than the NFL. Mike White's league average at like 2.71. That's a big difference. That's a half a second. And that's a huge gulf between those two quarterbacks. The processing speed that White has on getting the ball out and getting it to his playmakers, especially like Garrett Wilson, their wide receiver, that's really important. And I think that the team kind of thrives on that and gives them a little extra confidence, gives the line a little extra time. Their line's kind of poor and beaten up at this time of the year too. So he gives them a better chance to win. The question really is, what are you playing for? Are they really playing for something this year, or is this completely just the teams exceeded expectations, both teams? And really it's lining up for next year. I think that's true for both teams. But it'll be interesting because I think Seattle has a really decent shot. I'm not exactly sure where the Jets sit in the playoff hunt over on their side in the AFC, because I just haven't looked at it. But the Seahawks need to win both games to be in contention and need a little help from like Washington and the Giants to get in. I think it's doable, but I'm not so sure at this time of the year with things the way that they are, if that's the best thing or not. I'm still kind of in win now mode anyway, because I know that's the way Pete's gonna operate this game. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the Seahawks are actually still in it at 7-8 because you've got 8 6-1 for the Giants and 7-7-1 for the Commanders. So they're half a game behind the Commanders. They're still in it and currently sitting in the eighth spot. So they need to be able to move up just in front of one of those two teams. Unfortunately, you look at the Giants, they've got the Colts, the Commanders got the Browns. Those should both be some pretty easy wins for them. So, at this point, you're kind of looking at it coming down to week 17, if that's what your hope is. On the other side, you've got the Jets at 7-8, and the Dolphins they're at 8-7. Actually, the Jaguars at 7-8 are also probably going to make the playoffs because they're in first place in the AFC South, which is crazy to think about. But the other thing the Jets have to worry about is they've got to overcome the Patriots because the Patriots have a tiebreaker over them. Although those two teams play next week, so they have a chance to move up. But they're going to have to get some help. They really are in order to get in. And same with Seattle.
I feel like I'm spoiled because I'm just not excited. It's like I've had this expectation level for the last 10, 11 years of the Seahawks playing really well and getting into the playoffs and maybe getting into the second round or whatever. Although that seems not true as well now that I'm thinking about it. But with this losing record at this point with 2 games left, it's hard to kind of get excited about your team because you just have it's just unrealistic that they would do anything if they did get there. So I would almost rather just take the L's and increase my opportunities in the draft because I know that's really where I'm focused now is improving this roster, improving this team. It's not going to come from what we've already have. It's going to come from outside. And the best opportunity to do that is through the draft and free agency. And so, it could be a difference of 7 or 8 spots in the draft if we win out or if we lose out. So,
well, yeah, because if you win out and you happen to make it in, the best you're going to get as far as playoff spot is like 20th.
Yeah.
And right now they're sitting at 12th. And
with an opportunity maybe to get into the top 10 with their second pick. The first one's going to be in the top 5, it looks like.
Yeah, because Denver is not doing anything. And so, yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. Like, what do you want? I
want them to be competitive.
I want them to be competitive. I want these games to be entertaining, and the results, plus or minus, they don't matter much to me. The difference between the 11th pick and the 14th pick really isn't enough for me to like pound the table for losses or anything like that. I just want to be entertained. I want this to be good games. I want the Seahawks to be competitive, and I want their young players to continue to get more playing time, more reps, to get better for next year.
Yeah. Speaking of, Will Disley's was put on IR with a knee injury. I didn't see or hear the severity of the injury or anything like that, if it's cautionary. I didn't hear, tear involved, surgery, anything like that. Have you heard anything?
I have not. It sounds like he was going to be out for, I think it was like a 3 or 4 week injury, and then he would be back, and they're like, there's 2 weeks left in the season. So they just went ahead and put him on IR so they would have a roster spot to bring someone else up.
Jacob Hollister. They didn't bring him up, but he did get signed to the practice squad, which is interesting. And then I was thinking of Parkinson. You mentioned opportunities for young guys. I was thinking of Parkinson maybe having an additional opportunity or two to do something, especially in the red zone. All right, so let's talk about this for a minute. I was thinking about Tyler Lockett too. Had hand surgery like a week and a half ago, and is prepping to play in this game, which is remarkable to me.
That's weird.
Considering the time of the year and whatnot. They could have easily shut him down, decided to keep pushing forward. He practiced the other day, went through everything. According to Pete Carroll, came out just fine. So he's likely to start. Ken Walker's back and as healthy as he's been in a few weeks. He's ready to go. Let me see that the Marquise Goodwin is looking questionable at this point. Travis Homer's looking questionable with an ankle. Noah Fant was limited in practice. Abe Lucas has got a kind of a knee thing. Nobody's really said exactly what that is other than a patella tendon strain. So that's concerning to me. I would almost be inclined to shut him down. I don't think that he plays this week. I think we take a look at Stone Forsythe starting at right tackle this week.
Actually, it might not be Forsythe starting. It could also be Curran. Because one of the things that you look at is that Curran on game day as a backup is less valuable than Forsythe because he can only play on the right side, where Forsythe can play on both. But
that's very true.
But when you look at actually on the field, if he's going to start at, we're looking for a starter at right tackle, who's the better player? So they should both be active, and we'll see who actually gets out there. I'm kind of inclined to see Curran again, just simply because the running game is so much better when he's in there. And so let's get him in there. Let's let him do his thing. Let's hopefully protect him a little bit against, pass rush and, get the running game going.
I agree. And that would be important in this game. Ryan Neal looks like he's going to miss another week. And Al Woods looks like he's going to be back. So that's good. I was going to say too, just in recognition of Tyler Lockett needs 36 yards to get to 1,000 yards for his fourth straight season. Only other player to do that in franchise history, Steve Largent. That's awesome. Last week, DK Metcalf set the franchise record for most receiving yards in a player's first 4 seasons. So far this year, he's got 86 receptions for 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns. Geno Smith having a chance to play for the team that drafted him. Second round, 2013, which it's just a remarkable story. I think one of the best stories in the NFL this year is Geno's ability to come back after being essentially a backup quarterback in the league for 6 years, and then coming back around to play his team with playoff things on the line is pretty sweet for him. And Pete Carroll playing, he coached the Jets in 1994, Keith. They fired him after 1 season. So that's interesting. Yeah, Not that these stories really matter, but it's just a little flavor.
There was an ownership change there. And new ownership, brought in new management who wanted their coach and stuff. So it wasn't like you were terrible, like so bad you got fired after 1 season. It was a weird situation there, but yeah, he did used to, he was the coach there. And there are a lot of connections between these two teams. I mean, you can go back to the Vinny Testaverde helmet is the reason why we have instant replay, because he did not get in, but his helmet did, and an official called it a touchdown. It kept the Seahawks out of the playoffs. It also it got us instant replay back, but it also got us Mike Holmgren. Because if they make the playoffs that year, they probably stick with
Dennis
Erickson for another year, and they decided not to, and they went the Mike Holmgren route. And so there's just a lot of connections.
Yeah, there is. Jamal Adams trade. You've got Dwayne Brown and George Fant over there on their offensive line, going to play this weekend. So that'll be interesting. Leon Washington is one of their special teams coaches. I don't know if you remember Washington, punt returner, kick returner that we had during the Holmgren era. So that's interesting. So I want to talk to you about the Jets defense, because that seems to be the strength on this team. The defensive line and defensive backs are really solid. Geno's been playing well, but the Jets are holding offenses to 195 yards passing per game, 5th best in the NFL. One of the reasons they do that is they do get to the quarterback. They get pressure, they get some sacks, they get all that kind of disruption. And the back end with Reed and Sauce Gardner playing corners for them have done a really good job in limiting opportunities for wide receivers. And the Jets linebackers are good too. Quincy Williams and CJ Mosley against Ken Walker will be a good matchup to watch. They've allowed the 4th lowest yards per carry in the NFL this year. So it's going to be a real struggle depending on what the defense does for Seattle to show up in this game. If we can create more opportunities for our offense, I think it's going to turn out really well. If we struggle to stop them on offense, then we should be able to stop them. They don't have a great running attack. The quarterback is kind of iffy, but he tries to go, he can throw the ball downfield, but we've got good defenders against that. And then, their running game is somewhat non-existent. So we should be able to beat this team really head to head.
It comes down to, it looks like it's going to be a low scoring game because
it does.
Their offense is bad. Our defense is bad. So that might, kind of was there, but their defense is good, and that's going to slow Seattle down. And Seattle hasn't been great on offense the last few weeks, except for the second half last week. But even then, they didn't put up points. So, we'll have to see. We'll have to see how this shakes out. But it's not going to be easy. This is a pretty good defense team. They've had 40 sacks on the year.
And Seattle's offensive line has just not been that good. The last 6 games, particularly, Geno Smith has been hit, hurried, and sacked more than any other quarterback the last 2 weeks against the 49ers defense, against the Chiefs defense. And the Jets pass rush is legit. And we've struggled with run blocking too. So that'll be an interesting matchup. The most interesting matchup for me is Quinnen Williams, who's drafted 4 years ago or so, who's really come on for them this year against Seattle's interior offensive line. He has 12 sacks, ranks number 1 for interior defensive linemen. Also has 24 hits and 12 tackles for loss, both top 10 in those categories as well. So he's probably next to Aaron Donald, having one of the best interior defensive lineman years in the NFL this year.
Yeah, I mean, and that's of course the weakness of Seattle's offensive line, right? Is the center and a right guard, and so if he lines up in that A gap, the Seahawks are going to struggle to slow him down.
Yeah. No, I mean, we've got to figure they've got to account for him for every play. I mean, they've got to double team him, they've got to rub him, they've got to slow him down in whatever way they can, get the ball out quick, run the ball, straight at him. I think is a good strategy. Use some of that aggressiveness, against him, get him going in one direction and so forth. What else? They really struggle running the ball, which has been a weakness of Seattle's defense lately. George Fant, Laken Tomlinson, Connor McGovern, Nate Herbig, all bottom 5 in run block win rate over the past 2 games at their respective positions against middling defenses. The only positive aspect of this whole thing for them is they face the 31st ranked Seattle run defense, which is, so it's almost like all these matchups are kind of balanced out by the ineptitude of the other side in those categories. And that's why it's hard to figure out this game, because, what they do really poor at, we also do really poor at, et cetera. And
so I was looking at because I know their rush offense isn't good, and you look at some of the stats, but if you look at their yards per carry at 4.3, they're roughly average.
But they're falling behind.
Yeah, but that's the thing, is they keep falling behind, and so they stop running the ball and that. But if they come out, they may come out and run the ball a lot early in this game, wear Seattle out, because if Seattle can't stop it, why not? But on a per carry basis, they're in the middle of the league. And then you look at Seattle on a per carry basis is 4.7, which is near the top of the league, which is hard to believe given what we've seen the last month. But that shows you how good the running offense was earlier before that.
So one of the matchups that I'm really kind of interested in, and everyone's talking about, is Sauce Gardner and Tariq Woolen. Obviously, they don't go against each other, but Tariq's going to be in coverage against Garrett Wilson, one of the best wide receivers out of last year's draft, close to 1,000 yards, 80 some odd receptions. He's the real deal, even in a kind of a unsettled, poor offense. And then on the other side, you got DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett against Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed. Those are matchups, I think, that are keys to this game, really, and turning the ball over.
Those are going to be the fun matchups of this game, because you look at Sauce Gardner and Tariq Woolen are the two guys that seem to be competing for Defensive Player of the Year. Sauce Gardner probably has the nod just because he plays in New York and is getting a lot of press. But if you look statistically, you've got Woolen's been the better player overall, but it's really fairly close. I mean, strength on strength, right? So you have that, and then on the other side, you've got Wilson and Metcalf. So it's an interesting spot to be because this is the fun matchup. This is the thing that I'm going to be watching. This is where we're going to be to see who comes out ahead. Can Metcalf do something against Sauce Gardner? Because if he can, right, that's great for Seattle. But if you get shut down a lot, hopefully Lockett can pick up the slack a little bit. But on the other side, you got Woolen against one of the best, right, one of the best rookie corner. Or one of the best rookie corners against one of the best rookie wide receivers. So I mean, these teams may not be great, but these are individual players are outstanding.
One of the things I'm going to be watching is the Dwayne Brown matchup against whoever he's up against, because we all know we saw Dwayne Brown last year before, et cetera, wearing down, diminishing returns, not worth the contract. He's still a good player, a savvy veteran, if you will, but he just lacks the speed now to get to the edge and maintain that leverage. And so I'm really interested to see what Uchenna Nwasu can do, and Darrell Taylor on that side, and Boye Mafe. The talk in the Seattle media and from Pete Carroll is we need to give Boye Mafe more opportunities to be on the field, A, B, to rush the passer. He's been solid as heck defending the run this year, and in limited opportunities. I mean, he's been getting 20, 25 defensive snaps a game. He should be getting close to 40, 45 out of 70, close to 60%. At this stage in the season, you really want that kid to be playing. And he's one of our best run defenders, to be completely honest. And his entire upside coming out of the draft was his ability to get to the quarterback and his speed and athleticism coming off the edge. We just haven't had a chance to see that yet. And I don't know who's responsible for that, but they need to change that.
Yeah, they've been doing a lot. He's lost a lot of playing time to Bruce Irvin and Darrell Taylor.
And why? Why?
Well,
I mean, you're 7 and 8.
Yeah, they thought they were competing for a playoff spot, but at this point, you got to get him in there. I mean, they think he's going to make.
You can make mistakes. The argument that he's the better player at this stage.
He is, but he's also on a play-to-play basis, he's the better player overall, but he's also going to make more mistakes. And that's why they're playing Bruce Irvin, is they're just trying to get so that there's less mistakes being made, less big plays.
The whole defense is a cluster. I mean, let's be honest. It's not just, the comparison between Irvin and Boye Mafe, but I get that point. I do. I just think that at this point, man, you really got to start playing that guy so that he's ready next year to kind of step in for a larger role. Because Bruce Irvin's not coming back. He's here because that's all we had. We didn't sufficiently address the situation, and Darrell Taylor had a poor first half of the season, and they had to bring him in. So anyway.
Yeah, I mean, and it's kind of a cool story. Like he, coming back and and I'm
not dissing on
being a guy from from the old guard coming back and helping this defense and being some veteran leadership when they need it, because they're really young on defense and all that. But yeah, you got to get Mafe some more playing time. I just think you've got to, every rep that you can get him is valuable for his development for next year. So he should be playing more than half the snaps.
So you talked about the struggle to score points in this game and having it being low scoring affair. Seattle's offense has only scored 16 or fewer points in 3 of the last 6 games. And in the last 2 games combined, Seattle's only scored 23 points. Granted, against pretty decent defenses, although you can argue the Chiefs were kind of middling. They played really well against the Seahawks, though. And then New York's offense has been even worse. Haven't scored more than 17 points in 4 of their last 6 games. Scored 3 points twice during that span. So yeah, it's going to be one of those games where it's either going to be like a slog and difficult to watch and, 12 combined punts, or somebody's going to get turned loose and this thing's going to open up. And I'm having a hard time trying to figure out what the difference is. And I think one of the differences that I'm looking at in this game is Seattle to kind of figure out a way to generate some turnovers. Seattle has not created a turnover in their last 3 games, after forcing at least one in 11 of their first 12. They're 0-4 on the season when they don't have any turnovers, and so that's daunting right there. I mean, they need at least one, if not 2 or 3 turnovers in this game to be able to create opportunities to make it a difference. Because the way I see this game, and you go look at the Jets and the Seahawks scores on all their opponents, these are 1-score teams, 1-score victories or losses either way on quite a few of these things. And so this, to me, I'm thinking this is going to be a like 20-17 kind of an affair. And I'm hoping Seattle's on the winning edge of that, but they could also come up short as well.
Well, the one thing that I look at with this is I think I agree. I think it's going to be a low scoring game because the Jets offense is pretty dang bad. And Seattle's, offense is better, but hasn't been. Although they did seem to figure some things out in the second half last week. So maybe that carries over. But overall, if it's, 13-13 in the fourth quarter, which offense do you trust more to put together those fourth quarter drives, and, be able to move the ball in the hurry up and that kind of stuff? And I trust Seattle's more, mainly because I trust Geno Smith more, which is weird to say because he has been part of the problem recently, but he has been so good at other times. I just trust, I trust Seattle's offense and Geno Smith more to get those touchdowns or at least points late in the game when you need them, because otherwise it's, going into overtime.
Here's the deal with White. He's only played in 2 or 3 games. This isn't like a perennial starter or anything. He's like a practice squad guy. The Geno Smith, for everything that you want to say about Geno, he's a competent, seasoned veteran at this point, both as a backup and a starter in this league. And he knows how to generate opportunities and plays and yards when he needs to. And quite frankly, like Geno is the 7th ranked running quarterback in the NFL. And the Jets are the 27th ranked defense defending scramble plays and runs by quarterbacks. Smith's averaging 8.6 yards per carry. So in the fourth quarter, when they're pressed to need something, I like Geno's opportunities to run the ball and pick up first downs and extend drives. And that's a difference to me.
Yeah. Agreed. It's a situation for them where, you're right. Mike White's not, like a perennial starter or anything, but he's been the better of their 2 quarterbacks. And that's why, it matters to them that they
do have 7 wins. This isn't, a really poor team. They're just not great.
Yeah.
And Zach Wilson has been awful. Every opportunity they've had, they've really tried to step up for him this year. They said all the right things. Robert Saleh's not given up on the kid. It reinstated him as a starter when Mike White was injured. Speaking of injury, Mike White's got those fractured ribs that he got 3 weeks ago. Was supposed to be a 5 to 6 week recovery. He's back. So that could be a factor, but they've given up on Zach Wilson. So he came in last week, completely disastrous. They're done. He's benched. He's going to be inactive these last 2 weeks, and they said as much. So an interesting offseason for Zach Wilson.
The
number, if he can rehab his
number 2 overall pick in the draft. And he's been the one complete flameout out of the 5 quarterbacks taken that year. And, but yeah, the offense only could score 3 points with him leading it against the Jaguars. The week before it was 17 against the Lions. And, the
Lions don't have a great defense.
The Lions defense is the one defense that you can trust to be far worse than Seattle's right now. And they only got 7. I mean, he's just not doing a lot as far as leading this team, and being able to convert and do all the different things that you expect a quarterback to do. And at this point in his career, he needs to be showing at least flashes of, hey, this guy will figure it out eventually. And he's not showing anything. So, yeah.
So the last matchup I wanted to talk to you about before complete predictions, I kind of threw one out a little bit ago, but is Kenneth Walker versus, CJ Mosley and Quincy Williams at linebacker, and then Quinnen Williams right in the center of their defense. How do they neutralize those players to get Ken Walker going in this? Ken Walker's got 803 yards rushing on 176 carries, 9 touchdowns, 0 fumbles, been really effective when he's been effective. If they can get him going. Last game, he had 170 yards and on a bunch of carries.
Almost all in the second half.
All in the second half. And if they can keep that going, get that started early in this game, it could be, Seattle could start scoring some points and kind of blow this thing up before it gets started. A few teams have done that against the Jets. Good, solid offenses. We just haven't seen enough consistency in Seattle for the last 6 weeks to call Seattle's offense anything close to solid. And so it'd be nice to kind of reinvigorate that thing and get it going, but they're going to have to try to neutralize those quality players.
Well, you look at what they did last week, because it didn't work at all in the first half. The Walker couldn't get back to the line of scrimmage. He was trying to bounce things, and there was nothing to bounce it to. There was no holes. He was running into the back of his linemen because his linemen were getting pushed back so far into where he's supposed to be. And then you look what happened in the second half. And what they kind of did was they started moving laterally less and started moving more north and south, but not just straight up the middle. They got away from inside zone where, Gino's in the shotgun and you hand it off into the A gap there. And they went more to a more traditional running game where, Gino is under center and, they would attack. It's an outside zone scheme, even though the cut and they bring it up into the A gap anyway. And once they started doing that, it started to really work for them. And that's the kind of thing that I think we're going to see from Seattle here is get away from the inside zone, get away from that, and go back to what they wanted to do from the beginning. And that's it doesn't have to be a zone stretch where you're running way out, but you get the defensive lineman moving laterally, let him read the blocks as to where the seal is and cut up through it. And it could be a cut. You can start right and end up running between the center and the left guard because the whole line moves over that way. And that's just where the seal block is. And you get a chance to cut up through that hole. And they did a lot of that in the second half. And I want to see that again. Like that's the running game that they said they were going to do this year and kind of got away from. And I want to see them get back to that outside zone and really just make it hard on the defense.
So Robert Saleh, is a good coach, and
he is.
He's had some experience against this offense. Maybe not, from Seattle, but he's seen it in San Francisco. He's played against the Rams a few times. So he knows how to defend this. The question is, does he have the personnel to do it? So it's interesting to me. I love these kind of matchups where you've got old coaches that kind of know.
Weird. It's so weird to say that the Jets are well coached. When was the last time that was true?
Pete Carroll in 1994. I'm kidding. No. Yeah, you're right. It's been a hot mess there for at least 10 years.
Yeah, more than. Because you go all the way back to the Mark Sanchez.
That's the time frame. Yeah.
No, I wouldn't call that team well coached.
Well,
you've got
who was there? Was it Buddy Ryan?
No, it's Buddy Ryan's kid.
Rex Ryan.
Rex Ryan.
And then
Rex Ryan's just
is a character.
He's more than a character. But he was never a good coach. And
right. Who was the guy before that? The big guy.
I don't know.
God, I don't know. He's like he's one of the better, most recognized coaches in the NFL. He's out of the league now, but I just saw him on TV the other day. I can't remember his name though. Anyway, but you're right. It's been at least 10, if not 15 years. But he has nothing to it's hard to compare generations in football. But Robert Saleh is, has got him playing well. I think they're an up and coming team. They're a quarterback away. This draft will be really interesting for them. And I would be excited if I was a Jets fan. They have something to play for now. Robert Saleh's done enough where he's going to stick around. I think they need some help on the offensive line. It wouldn't be surprised if they go that direction in the draft, depending on who's available at quarterback or what they do in the offseason. I don't know if they're going to get anything for Zach Wilson. Probably not.
Who would give him anything for Zach Wilson?
Well, I mean, there's some upside there. You could pitch him a 5th round pick, but that's kind of where they're at. Like Rosen type of deal, or these guys still, there's some GM that scouted him and before the draft that still thinks he's got something left or was not coached correctly or whatever. They might throw a little bit at him, but other than that, it's hard to see. But I would be excited. I mean, but they need to, Becton is their left tackle, went out on injured reserve. That's why they got Dwayne Brown in. Dwayne Brown's not going to be there next year. George Fant, they could have some improvement along their offensive line.
Yeah, they could. And I'm but at the same time, Saleh's done a good job with the players he's been given. He's, they've got some things, they've got Garrett Wilson at wide receiver, someone that can affect games and game plans. He's a legit player. And then you look at the 2 corners that they got. They went out and signed DJ Reed away from Seattle, and he's been great. And then they drafted Sauce Gardner, and he's been outstanding. So they've got the cornerbacks, they've got a wide receiver. They have pieces. This is pieces of a really good team. They just need to finish filling in the roster.
I agree. Okay, let's go play a game. We're down to the last 2. This season's gone by remarkably quick. I thought it was just going to be a long season and a trudge to kind of get through. Ended up being fun, and it's gone pretty fast. So hopefully we play beyond the 2 games remaining here, but we'll see. Let's go enjoy this one. What's your prediction on this score? I
think Seattle pulls this one out, but I think it's going to be ugly. 16-13 Seattle.
Yeah, I'm going to go 2017 Seattle. For the reasons that we stated on Gino's play, in the 4th quarter. But yeah, conversely, I think Seattle could get into the 30s if the running game really starts off nice for them and they're able to establish that early. Gives them their entire playbook when that happens, because they can run so many formations out of the same sets, or the same, formation, run so many plays and sets out of that. It just really opens everything up, makes it very difficult to stop. So it really does depend on Ken Walker in this game, I think.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, let's get out of here. Find Keith on Twitter at Myers NFL. You can find me at NWC Hawk. You know where the show's at. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, though, when you find it, and share it with your friends and family. So until next time, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NWC Hawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.